Welcome to MMT Chats. This episode is brought to you by ISCAR with new ideas for machining intelligently.
Hey MMT followers, Christina Fuges with MoldMaking Technology, and my guest on today's MMT Chat is Cara Walton with Harbour Results. Cara is one of MoldMaking Technology's 30 under 30 honorees. So first, hi Cara.
Hi Christina, great to be here.
And congratulations. First, I have to ask you, so how does it feel not just being nominated, because I mean, that in itself is a gift, but we got way more than 30. So you were selected to be one of our 30. So how does it make you feel?
It's wonderful. I'm really honored to be a part of the group. I think there's a lot of really awesome people that ultimately were awarded it. So that was great. And I think there's been a lot of challenges for the past year in the industry. There always is, but definitely for the last year or so. The opportunity to be recognized for the work that I've been doing in the industry is wonderful. It's really been an honor for me.
So why don't you explain a little bit what your current position is and what you do every day, since, like I said before, you're pretty unique in terms of the scope of the young professionals I wanted to highlight. You are definitely a unique aspect of the industry that I think people need to know about, that there's job opportunities in this aspect of mold making.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I do, I work for Harbour Results, which I'm sure many of your followers are familiar with. But overall, we're a consulting and analytics firm. So what I have the pleasure of doing for the organization is managing the database side of the business. And what that database is it's tracking and understanding all mold makers and the customers of mold and die makers, so both stampers and molders, in the North American market. So what I get to do every day is study that data, study that information that we're collecting, and then couple that with the macro focuses that happen in the world. So, okay, I know no one really cares about whether or not GDP grew from a macro perspective, but we care about what it means to mold building, and things like that. So it's all right. I really like it. I have the pleasure of loving my job.
I can tell by the way you're talking that you really like it. So let's talk a little bit. Let's give the viewers an idea of how you got here. So what was your journey? Like, what were you like as a kid? Like, and to end up through, your educational process, different jobs that you've had, and how you landed at Harbour in this very specific niche of manufacturing.
Yes, it is a very specific niche of manufacturing. So I had a couple opportunities as I was growing up. I grew up with a dad who's in plastics processing. So he's a career molder, has ran a lot of mold facilities, both in the automotive industry and outside of it. So as a child, I was already familiar with mold making. Frankly, I didn't know very much about it. I knew much more about the fact that dad was making plastic parts, and that's what I knew. I didn't necessarily connect the dots that you had to inject resin into something to create said plastic part. And then as I got a little bit older, I ended up studying economics at the University of Louisville. And I interned at GE Appliances. I was a finance intern with them, which was wonderful because I was on the sourcing side. So I understood not only material sourcing, but tool sourcing and things like that, and how it affects an OEM, not an automotive OEM, but an appliance OEM, which was very important. And I was very close to home in Louisville as well. So it was pretty easy to go to school and simultaneously work at GE. And then I ended up interning with Harbour when I was in undergrad. So the funny thing about me since I was a kid is that I've always loved Detroit. I'm not sure I can tell you why I've always loved Detroit, but it's like one of my favorite places in the continental US. Always knew I wanted to live there. So Harbour was a great opportunity for me to spend a summer in Detroit, which most kids probably didn't love the idea of, but for me it was great. It was like, this is gonna be awesome. I'm gonna be in Detroit all summer. I'm gonna go up north. It's gonna be so cool. So I was really excited about that. And then I ended up getting a position with them after I graduated. So part of the reason why the niche got to happen is because my dad is one of the two owners of Harbour. So he started the business with Lori, right?
Okay.
So I got to intern, and for lack of a better term, I'm sure many second generation leaders know this, I got to prove myself. I got to say, hey, I want a job. And they said, okay, well, intern and we can figure out whether or not you deserve a job, right?
Yeah.
So I got the test when I interned, and then after I graduated, they gave me an offer.
That's awesome. I mean, that's a story that's common even within the mold side, right? The facility shop side of the business. So you fit right in and can identify with that journey. I think that's great.
Yeah.
So no, sorry. So you grew up and you were exposed to the molding side, the plastic side of mold making, but there's plenty of these preconceived notions, right, about what mold making is all about, let alone manufacturing. So was there a particular notion that you had, and now that you've been at Harbour and really immersed in this side of it, is there something that you were like, wow, I really thought it was like that and it's nothing like that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that's more of like a myth that needs to be busted, and one that I definitely wasn't fully familiar with, was that mold making and die making, overall tool making in general, is more of a dirty job, right? It's something that isn't really cool to do. And when I interned, and then especially after I graduated, part of the perk of my job is I get to be in so many mold shops. I get to tour a bunch of facilities, and I would always love to tour more, right? Pre-COVID, I was in at least 3 a week. So it was wonderful. And what I got to do when I was on those floors was realize there's some really awesome stuff happening, right? Not only are we doing a good job building molds, that's great, but that's not what to be proud of. What to be proud of is that we're machining in all these amazing ways. We're improving cutting paths. We have kids that are younger than me that are innovating ways to better program offline or online or whatever. And then we're making it so that we can really build the best tool that we can make, but then we can also solve the problems for some of these massive companies where they're going to a small $10 to $20 million shop and saying, here's an issue. And we've got the guys in those shops that can solve big problems, right? And it's something that I think I took for granted, that there was such a strong subset of the manufacturing population in mold making that really was trying to solve these issues, and sometimes they were just overlooked. So I think it was really awesome for me to not only come into Harbour and learn about manufacturing, but to have the pleasure of starting on the tooling side of the business, because that's where a lot of our data lied. I got to start with all of those people, right? And I got to know all the presidents and all the owners of these tool shops and spend my time with them. So it's been wonderful since I started.
I agree with that, because I keep saying this about them all these years. In essence, they are just problem solvers. Like whatever is thrown at them, they just figure it out. And and you're right, there are so many times where we're always trying to get them to inject themselves earlier in the process, because your input is so valuable that if that OEM or even that molding customer would listen to you, it would be done better and it would be done quicker. But that is something. It's funny to think 2021, it's still a fight for them, and sometimes to even see themselves that way, to think that I have something to offer here or they're going to listen to me. So you got to be aggressive, because their minds are just, it's incredible to me. So I totally agree with you. So what would you say so far working at Harbour has been your number one challenge?
I've still got some people who are sit at the end of a table and say, what's this girl? What does she have to tell me? Right? What is she going to say that I don't already know about how to run my business? So it can be hard. I'll be honest.
But I can tell that you're up for that challenge. You seem to have, and you have to have that personality to build those relationships.
As people in their 20s coming into the industry, I think everyone should, and I think it's an amazing industry to be a part of, but we've got to make sure that we can back up every single piece of it, right? That's the challenge, but the fun part, and the challenge that I get up every day to do.
That's awesome. So does that tie directly to what you consider the most interesting part of your job, or is it something else?
It does tie directly. My favorite part of my job is truly just having conversations with mold builders, or be able to go back to my team, which we have a team of 20 people at Harbour who have a bunch of experience in manufacturing and process flow in the mold building industry, and say, okay, guys, here are problems that I learned about today that I had no idea existed in the mold building industry. How about you guys give me some advice on what the best thing for this client to do is, or this mold builder to do is, and then I learn more too. So it's kind of the notion that I am confident that no matter how long I'm in this industry, I will learn something new every single time I talk to a mold builder.
Is there a particular project in that area that you were part of that you found just, I don't know, really rewarding or really valuable to the industry? And what was your role in that project?
A big part that I really loved there was that I had the opportunity with our organization to go forward and to work with lobbyists to say, here's the reasons why we need to make sure that molds are not exempt. Excuse me. What I mean by that is that we're still tariffing molds at 25%, because we went through this period of time where we weren't. And to go forward and work with lobbyists to say, here's all the data, here's all the information, here's why this mold building industry is so critical, and why you can't necessarily keep this you can't get rid of the 25% tariff on them. And the biggest thing about that I think was really interesting for me and somewhat of an eye-opener is that, to your point that we need to make sure that mold builders are early on in the process of figuring out how we're going to make a new part. If we don't have the capability to build molds here and to build dies here, we ultimately don't have the capability to make parts here. Right? We can still have presses on shop floors and we can still have resin, but if we can't build the mold, we don't have that capability to ultimately innovate and to make whatever it is that we need to make. So it was really fun for me to get all the data and macro forces to back up that commentary and then work to get the tariff reinstated, which we were successful in, at least for now. I don't know how long it'll hold, but in the meantime, we did a good job of it. So that was by far the most fun for me.
So then in tons of shops. So is there one particular technology that you've seen that's it for you? It kind of blows your mind and you don't get sick of looking at it and watching it work.
I would struggle to say that there's one specific piece of technology just because I see so much, but the biggest thing that I've loved seeing recently is all of the different types of technology and different technologies working together to ensure this capability for people to work remotely. So I remember for a long time having conversations with mold shops where like, there's no way my programmers can program from home.
Yeah.
That is not a thing. That's never going to happen. And we're doing it today, right? A lot of different programming softwares have figured it out and they've said, nope, we're going to make it happen where you can do this and you can do that at your home or in Florida, wherever you want to be.
Yeah.
And we can make sure that you can still have your job and you can still program for us. And then two things happen because of it. People are actually way more efficient at programming from home, generally speaking. There are a lot of guys who are way better at it. And to add to that, now we have the opportunity to attract a labor pool that maybe doesn't want to live somewhere in, no offense to Bodunk, Michigan. I love Michigan too.
Yeah.
But doesn't want to live in some small town in Michigan rather than living in a city center where they can be close to their friends and family. And we can still give them a job and still get the labor. Yeah. So I've been really impressed with things like that. And I know like a lot of machine monitoring softwares that are letting you track your machines from home, and a lot of the machine manufacturers that are letting us machine in new ways and figure out ways to track all of what's happening in our machines and where they're located remotely is just ideal, right? That's I think COVID unfortunately or fortunately gave us the push to that we already knew a lot of the millennial generation wanted to work remotely, and we were just forced to figure it out. So I hope now it can sustain itself going forward, and the technology is what's making that happen.
Exactly. So speaking of workforce, a big thing with the seasoned generation, I'll call them, I won't call them old, seasoned generation, and the next generation is mentoring. And I'm learning that everybody kind of defines that differently. So how do you define mentoring, whether you're doing it, whether you're mentoring or someone's mentoring you?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question because I think that mentors are, I'm not going to say mentors are overrated, but I think mentors are over formalized. So I think there's kind of this concept with a lot of people that I know, some people younger than me, older than me, my age, that all say, well, I need to have a mentor. So I need to go find somebody that I value in the industry and find somebody who I think is great. I need to talk to, I need to build a relationship. I need to look them in the eye and they say, will you be my mentor? That's a great approach. There's no issue with that approach, but that's not how you need to have a mentor, right? And you don't need to have one or two. You can have 20 mentors. And from my perspective, you can have good mentors and bad mentors, right? And what I mean by that is that you can have people in the industry that you look up to and you say, I want to be so similar to that person. I want to be a sponge when I'm around them. I want to understand how they interact with their teams. I want to understand how they interact with other businesses and how they interact with customers and service providers. And I want to get that, right? And you can understand that not from a formal relationship, but just from being able to interact with them and being able to see them at conferences and a mirror mold and things like that, right? But then you can also have people where you say, oof, I really don't want to be like that person, right? I don't want to be that type of leader. And the exact same thing can happen, that you can still be a sponge and understand and say, here are the things that I'm realizing this person does that rub me the wrong way. Let me not do that.
Yeah,
right?
That is true.
Sometimes that's more valuable. So it's almost that concept of formalized mentorships are great, but we need more than just one mentor that's going to help us, right? Our senior leaders, so Scott and Lori from our organization, told us something a couple weeks ago in a young leaders council I sit on, that you need mentors, coaches, and sponsors, and they can't all be the same person, which really rang true to me, right? Because I can't look at a mentor and expect that person to also build me up on rough days.
All those things.
You're my cheerleader, right? But I still need that cheerleader, and I still need that person that's going to build me up on those rough days. And I need a mentor who's going to show me the path to the future. And I need a coach who's going to say, that wasn't a great way to respond to that situation. Yeah. Maybe you should do better, right? That's the only way that young leaders become great. That's the only way that we become impactful in the industry, is that we have all those different forces helping to
I like that. I like it's not one and done. And I don't limit yourself to that. Expand your circle of influence there, right? Take more in. So when you think about, and not so much Harbour, but what you've experienced and what you've been exposed to in mold making, what would you say for somebody coming into mold making? What is that like top number one, whether it's a personality trait or a skill set that you think they need to be successful in mold making?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's my first answer is I don't think everyone needs to have the same one. And part of the reason why I say that is because I think if we all have the same one, then we might not be doing a great job of having diversity in the mold making community, which is something that you and I can both understand that we can harp on as a lack of diversity in the community, right? But within that, right, beyond that, we have to make sure that every single person coming into this industry has grit. And I don't mean that every single person needs to be loud and outspoken. I recognize that I am, but not everyone needs to be. But everybody has to have grit and has to have that capability of saying, okay, I got knocked down, didn't do a great job today. I'm going to get back up and I'm going to innovate, or I'm going to figure this out, or I'm going to go talk to my boss or talk to my direct reports, whatever. I'm going to do it tomorrow and I'm going to be better for it. Like that is what I think you really need in, I mean, frankly, in most industries, but especially in mold making, because to your point that we talked about earlier, there's a lot of challenges in this industry. Yep. So we got to make sure that we have the grit to get back up and keep facing them and keep being resilient and keep innovating.
Grit is a great word. I love that. I think I actually used that in the 30 under 30 feature. I think that's a great one.
There you go.
So what do you think, if we want to attract that next high schooler into manufacturing or mold making specifically, what do you think has to change to get more people to come into this industry?
Yeah, I think a big piece of what has to change is much more societal than it is mold making specific. We need to break this culture that everybody in high school needs to go to a 4-year university.
Let's end on, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah, I think my short answer to that question, and my internal team has heard me say this before, is I don't know. And I think sometimes people are scared to make that their answer, but that's still my answer. I think what I do know is that I absolutely intend on still being in this industry, and my goal is to continue making an impact on the industry, right? I think there is, as I said before, right, I get up every day because I want to make sure that we're making this industry better. And I have no doubt in my mind that 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, whatever it may be, there's no one that can give me a sales pitch good enough to say, come into this industry, because I won't leave this one. I truly, that's what I want to do every day, is use my intelligence and use what I know to make this industry better. So I have no doubt that I'll keep doing that 5 years down the road and beyond.
I love it. Again, congrats, Cara, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I really appreciate the time. It was wonderful to talk to you.
Great. And for everybody out there, for everything mold making, visit moldmakingtechnology.com. Stay safe and healthy, but more importantly, stay informed and stay inspired.